Good evening, interns and tutors, and welcome to our second workshop for interns and tutors 2023. I hope I'm audible enough. Natalie, may you please confirm if I'm audible enough?
Yes, you are, Taban.
Okay, thank you so much. And from the Office of the Registrar, we just want to take this opportunity to congratulate you all for having passed your BFAM degree. And we would like to wish you all the best with your internship year, which is going to be a challenging, at the same time, and a very exciting year. Then please take note of the following. To ask questions, you are requested to use the question and answer function on Teams or the comment section if you are joining using YouTube. And please note that this session is going to take 3 hours, and we encouraging you to stay with us until the end of the workshop so that you can get all information firsthand. And towards the end of the workshop, you will be requested to complete a survey to confirm your attendance and also to rate the workshop. So please, if you're not interested in rating the workshop, just complete it for the purpose of attendance, and don't, if you can just provide your personal details so that we can have you as a proof. I mean, we can have that as a proof that you have attended the workshop. We'll appreciate it. And then the presentation will be available on the website after this workshop, meaning from tomorrow, you'll be able to access this presentation. And please note that the answers will be, all your questions will be answered at the end of each presentation. Okay, and then our presentation for today is divided into 2 parts. And then the first part will be presented by the Office of the Registrar, and the second part will be presented by the assessors and moderators. So please stay with us until the end. Thank you. So let me also mention that in this workshop, we are also joined by a team from the Office of the Registrar that is responsible for communications. They are here taking care of the logistics of this workshop. And we're also having the representatives of assessors and moderators who will be here also to take you through the CPD. Yes, on how to complete CPDs and all the matters related to CPDs. So we are all here for you, interns and tutors. Please feel free to engage with us by posting your questions like I've already indicated. Okay, let's move on, Natalie. Okay, this is how our workshop is structured. So the welcome I've already done, and then there will be introduction to pre-registration. This presentation is going to be facilitated by myself. And then from there, we're going to have our second presentation, which will be facilitated by CPD assessors and moderators, which will be on the pre-registration evaluation CPD portfolio. And we will have a 10 minutes break just to stretch. And then we will continue with the presentation from assessors and moderators at 10 to 9. Then the team from communications will be facilitating the question and answer session. And then we will close our workshop at 9:00 p.m. Thank you. Okay, and this is the outline of the first presentation. We will be looking at the legal framework, pre-registration evaluation, and then we will also navigate the SAPC website. From there, we will look at some possible reasons that can contribute to the delay in releasing you from internship. And we will also look at CPD reassessment, appeals, and consultation procedures in case you want to consult with the assessor. And then we will also look what we mean when we're referring to unprofessional conduct. And then we will also share with you the 2022 CPD competency statistics, just for you to have an idea of how our interns performed in 2022. And then we will also share with you a little bit about applying for community service. And then lastly, we will take you through on how to contact the Office of Counsel. Okay, so with our first slide, we will be looking at the legal framework for pre-registration. Here we just reminding you that for you to commence your internship, you are required to first register with counsel. And then for you to be registered with counsel, you need to provide the counsel with information of the approved premises where you will be doing your internship. It can be in a community pharmacy, institutional pharmacy or hospital pharmacy, manufacturing pharmacy, and in academia. In addition to that, you are also expected to provide a contract that has been signed by your approved tutor, and also pay the prescribed fee, which is also indicated in the website. And please remember that internship you are required to undergo for a minimum of 12 months of practical training, meaning you are expected to be in the pharmacy under supervision of a pharmacist for the period of 12 months. Okay, and it's also important for interns to note that your scope of practice is exactly the same as that one of a pharmacist. The only difference is that you are working under direct supervision, meaning you cannot finalize anything without getting an approval from your tutor. And we're also having interns who are in manufacturing and academia. It is important for them to note that they are also expected to complete 400 hours of supervised practical training in an approved community or hospital pharmacy. So during this 400 hours, it's important to note that your tutor, who is either in a manufacturing or academia, is still your tutor. So nothing is changing. He's still responsible for you as an intern. And what you need to remember is that you need to arrange in time for your 400 hours with the facility that you will be doing your 400 hours, being either a community or a hospital pharmacy. And when you go for the 400 hours, you are requested to be there at least 5 consecutive days so that you can follow on what you will be taken through. Please take note of this one. And make sure that you keep records of all documents that you would have generated during your 400 hours, since you might need them when you're completing your CPDs. And make sure that your supervising pharmacist submit your progress report. So the supervising pharmacist here, we're not referring to your tutor, but the pharmacist who will be supervising you during the 400 hours. There is a progress report that they are expected to complete. Make sure that before you leave the facility, that has been taken care of so that it doesn't delay you from being released as an intern. And then there is also what we call cessation of contract. So this means that as an intern, you are allowed to terminate your contract with your tutor based on different reasons. But it's important for you to note that there is a procedure that you must follow in order for council to be in the know, and that will also assist in ensuring that your internship is not delayed. So what we are expecting from you as council is that you must submit an online application, and there is also a contract that needs to be completed by your new approved tutor as well as your old tutor, because the old tutor needs to indicate that your and his or her contract is coming to an end. And then there is a fee that needs to be paid as well. And we requesting you to make sure that those documents, they reach the office of the registrar at least 7 days prior to the date of session in order to avoid delays. Because if they reach us on time, the process of moving you to the new tutor will be a smooth one, and it won't delay you in any way. And you are also reminded that when you decide on ceding your internship to or the contract to a new tutor, please make sure that the facility and the tutor are both approved by council, because if they are not approved, that is also going to affect your internship. Then now we're going to look at the pre-registration evaluation. So what is it that as an intern you will be evaluated on during this pre-registration year? So the first thing, you are expected to write a pre-registration examination, and you need to pass that examination. Secondly, you are expected to submit CPD entries to the office via an online platform. Thirdly, your tutor is also expected to submit the progress reports. And in addition to the three, you need to be in a pharmacy under the supervision of a tutor for 365 days. And then let's look into more details. What is it that is expected of you? Under the pre-registration examination, you will be expected to book via an online platform. And please note that the pre-reg exam is an open book one. It is made up of 120 questions, and each of those questions is assigned 1 mark. There is no negative marking. And please note that you are considered to have passed the pre-registration if you have obtained 50% under the general questions and 60% under the calculations. And then under CPD portfolio, interns are required to submit 6 CPD entries online. And please note that under domain 5, competency standard 5.3 is compulsory, meaning interns are all expected to complete competency 5.3 under that domain. And then it is also important for you to note that your CPDs will be assessed and moderated, and you will receive the results, which will be released as per schedule that is published in the Intern and Tutor manual. So please make sure that you familiarize yourself with that schedule. And then it is also important for you to note that the results for CPD entries that are submitted after the deadline will be released on the next release date. And all CPD entries that are not yet successful, please remember that you need to look at the assessor's comments, work on them, and resubmit the entry until you are successful in it. And then at the end, once you are successful in all 6 CPD entries, you will be considered to be competent in CPD. And then with regard to the progress reports, interns who are placed in institutional, that is hospital and community pharmacies, are expected to submit 7 progress reports, and interns who are in manufacturing are expected to submit 9 progress reports. And in addition to that, they are also expected to submit a declaration of 400 hours. Then interns in academia, they are also expected to submit 3 progress reports and declaration of 400 hours. And in addition to that, they must also provide a proof of achievement of master's qualification. And the tutor need to submit a favorable progress report and once all those are provided, you will be competent in that regard. Next slide, please. Natalie. Okay,
I'm on the next slide, Tabang.
Okay, thank you. It wasn't showing from my side. And then this is CPD submission deadline. It's like a schedule that you will be you will be using when you're submitting your CPD entries. So the first column is providing the last date for submission of CPD entries. So with the new interns for 2023, if you're intending to submit after this workshop, please make sure that your CPD reaches the office by the 3rd of March 2023. And if that is the case, if you manage to submit by the 3rd of March 2023, you will be able to receive your results on the 29th of March 2023. That information is provided in the middle column. So if you fail to submit by the 3rd of March 2023, it means your CPD will be considered to fall under the cycle that will end up on the 3rd of April 2023, and then you will receive your results by the 27th of April. So please make sure that you familiarize yourself with those dates. And then while we are still there, it's also important for interns to note that according to council policy, you may apply for appeals, but make sure that your appeals are submitted within 1 calendar month after to note that there is a deadline in terms of submission time. So if you want to submit your CPD on the 3rd of March 2023, please note that the cutoff time is 12 o'clock p.m. or 12 in the noon, and anything that is submitted after that will fall in the new CPD cycle, submission deadline rather. So please take note of that. We didn't have the cutoff time in the previous years, but based on the challenges that we experienced, we have introduced this cutoff time just to make sure that in case you are experiencing challenges with regard to CPD submission, we can assist you, because the cutoff time, it will be during the day while we are still in the office. And then interns are also advised to submit 6 CPD entries within the first 6 months of their registration. So this will allow you to be able to sit for the exams if you are successful in at least 6 CPDs. So please make sure that you take note of that as well. And again, entries that are submitted after the 1st of December 2023, please note that they will only be assessed in January 2024, and the results will be released on the 22nd of January 2024 as indicated on those release and submission deadlines. And then interns must note that on submission of the 10th and subsequent CPD, there is a fee that will be charged, meaning from CPD 1 and CPD CPD 1 and CPD 9, you can submit those CPD free of charge. But once you are on your 10th CPD, then please note that there will be a fee that you are expected to pay to council. That is a fee of 290 rands. Thank you. Okay. Now we're moving on to the CPD feedback workshops. So what is happening is from the Office of Council, we will be arranging 2 workshops. The first one will be on the 7th of June, and the second one will be on the 29th of August. Both of these workshops will be conducted in the evening from 18 hours to 21 hours. And please note that everyone is welcomed in these workshops, and the purpose of these workshops are to respond to intern CPD queries and also to share CPD assessment experience, as well as to guide interns on how to improve the quality of their CPD entries. So these workshops are more focusing on interns who are struggling with CPDs, because the assessors and moderators will be there to take you through and also to respond to whatever challenges that you are faced with. So make sure that if you need help, you attend those workshops. Okay, and then we also having the exam dates. We're not going to dwell much onto these dates because there will be a workshop or wherein the exam information will be provided in details. For now, we just want to mention that there is what we call practice exam, wherein interns are encouraged to sit for that exam because it's a requirement for them to sit for the pre-registration examination. So we have already had the first workshop in January. The second one will be coming on the 1st of June, and there is another one that is scheduled for August. And then the date for the pre-registration examination, we're having one that will be taking place on the 1st and the 2nd of March. This one is targeting interns who have registered in 2022, because the new group of interns for 2020 who registered in 2023, they don't meet the requirements to sit for the pre-reg exam yet. So familiarize yourselves with those dates and you will receive more information in the workshops that are to follow. Thank you. Okay, this slide is just sharing with you the entrance requirements to the pre-registration examination. So the first thing that you need to know is that only interns who are on their 6th month of internship can be able to book or to sit for the pre-registration examination. But in addition to that, the interns should have submitted at least 6 CPD entries and be successful in at least 3 of them. And they should have also completed the practice examination, and the tutors must have submitted 3 progress reports. So those are the requirements for interns who are in their 6th month of internship. And then those who are in their 9th month of internship or more, they are expected to have submitted all 6 CPD entries and be successful in all of them. And they must have completed the practice examination and submitted the 4 progress reports. And then interns who are reattempting the pre-registration examination, they must be successful in all the 6 CPDs and and their tutors must have submitted the applicable progress report as well. So please note that there is no fee for the first and the second attempt, and a fee will be charged on the third and subsequent attempt. And more information on that, like I said, will be shared in the pre-reg examination workshops. But also note that your tutors will have access to your overall results. So don't be surprised and maybe feel as if we are violating the POPI Act. That is part of the internship training. Okay, now we're going to look onto the SAPC website. This is where you will be submitting your CPD entries. So make sure that you pay attention so that when you go to your personal space, you will be able to navigate the website. So there on top is the website for counsel that you will be using. And then once you have accessed the website, you will go to registered person, and then from there you will select pharmacist intern. And then once you have selected that, you will be able to see this page that is displayed. And for now, we are interested on how to get the manual. So you can either click on top there, or alternatively, you go to 2023 Intern and Tutor Manual. Once you click there, you will be able to access the manual, and you can even download it from that site. Again, there is what we call a CPD user manual, which you can also access it by clicking there, which will also assist you on how to submit CPD entries. Lastly, you can also be able to access other important documents that might assist you as you're doing your CPD. So you can access those documents by clicking there. Next slide, please. Okay. This page, you will only see it after you have logged into your secured site. So this will be your personal information. You will be able to see this dashboard, which will provide you information in relation to your finances, your applications, the letters and certificates from counsel, and the pre-registration examination. That's where you will be able to access the pre-reg exam. And then the contacts on how to contact counsel, the progress reports, the workshops that will also assist you on how to book for the workshop and so forth. So make sure that you familiarize yourself with this dashboard, because everything you need will be provided in there. And then on the left-hand side there is a menu wherein is the dashboard. That is the page that we are in. And then when you start working on your CPDs, you will click where is written CPD. Other than that, you are also able to access your manual there when you are on this page, and you can also view your progress under My Progress. And then next slide, Natalie. Okay, so when you log into the CPD page, the first thing that you will be required to do is to complete your annual declaration. So you won't access anything in terms of CPD until you have completed your annual declaration. So when you see this window, please just click where it's written Go to Annual Declaration, and it will take you straight to the annual declaration. There are a number of questions that you will be expected to complete, and then once you are done, then the system will allow you to access any information pertaining to CPD. Okay, so this is how the annual declaration page will look like. So it will indicate the year 2023, and then date created, it will indicate the date on which you did your annual declaration, and the role is already provided. And then under complete, it will be no until you have successfully completed your annual declaration. And then please note that when you complete your annual declaration, the status we expecting it to be practicing, since you are a practicing intern. If you see it non-practicing, then it means you didn't do something right. Then you must go back and update your annual declaration. Usually it will say non-practicing if you have selected I never do this option when you're completing your annual declaration. So make sure that you take your time and you complete it right, so that you will be given the practicing status, and the complete will then change to yes. Okay, this is how it will look. The annual declaration looks like. You will be asked questions with regard to your employment, with the domain competencies, and as well as the assessment criteria. So those are the questions that you will be expected to respond to. And then at the end of each part, like the employment, you just click continue. After you have answered all the questions, it will take you to the next page. You just press continue until the end. Next slide, please. So at the end, after you have answered the 3 sections that we have seen in the previous slide, then you will see this small window which is saying, according to your competencies, you are a practicing pharmacist. So we're expecting you to agree, because you are indeed a practicing pharmacist. If you are not, then you will disagree. Then it will take you back so that you can answer appropriately. Thank you. Right. So once you are done with your annual declaration, then you will be able to access information pertaining to CPD. It is important for intern to note that CPD is a cycle that is made up of 4 steps, which are reflection, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So all these 4 steps you will be expected to complete as you're submitting your CPD entries, and more information will be covered with the coming presentation. It's just important for you to note that when you are on the CPD page, when you click on CPD, you will see this page will come through. And then when you click on reflection on practice, that is step 1, it will give you more information on what is it all about, what kind of questions, or what is it that you need to do when you're doing when you're reflecting on practice. When you click on planning, it will give you more information on what is it and what is it that is expected of you, and so forth. So make sure that you also go through that page, because it will also assist in preparing you to get started with your CPDs. Next page, please. Okay. And then you will also come across the domain and competencies. This is the language of CPD that you need to familiarize yourself with. We're having 6 domains, that is public health, safe and rational use of medicines, supply of medicine and medical device, organization and management skills, professional and personal practice, and education, research, and critical analysis. So these are the domains that you are expected to choose a CPD from when you're doing your CPD entries. So when you click on each of these domains, you will also get more information on what public health is all about, on what safe and rational use of medicine is all about. So make sure that you also go through each of these domains in order for you to understand them better. Next slide, please. Okay, then we're having a CPD cycle reflection, which is the first step of CPD. So when you start submitting your CPD, entries online, this is what you will see. And then it will say identify a learning need. So here you will indicate what your learning need is. Like I said, I just want you to see how the system, I mean, on what you must expect to see, but more details on what is the reflection and so forth will be covered by the assessor. So the screen, this page shows what you will see when you are on the reflection step. Next slide, please. Okay, and then when you after you are done with the submission of your CPD entry, it will go to your tutor for verification before it is submitted for assessment. Once the assessor has assessed your CPD entry, and then it will be taken for moderation. From there, the results will be released. So from this slide, under my submission, you will be able to see the CPD entries that you have submitted, and it also show you the status, like submitted for compliance or awaiting submission. This is the language that you will see, and it is also important for you to make sure that you familiarize yourself with this terminology. The definition of this terminology is provided in your manual. So make sure that you go through them so that when you check under the progress of your submissions, you will understand what it exactly means. Thank you. Okay, and then this slide is showing you what you will see when the CPD results are released. Remember, I said after the CPDs have been assessed and moderated, results will be released on the dates that has already been shared with you. So in case you are not successful on that CPD entry, when you open the CPD, you will see the status that is saying awaiting submission. That is the one on the left-hand side. So this means that you are not successful. Therefore, you are expected to look at the assessor's comments and then work on them and resubmit your CPD entry. So it will indicate the date on which you submitted your CPD for the first time, and then it will also indicate the assessment status there as not yet successful. So whenever you see that, know that you are expected to resubmit. And when you want to start with your resubmission, you just click on the reflection and you will be able to go through all the steps of CPD. And then once you are done, you will submit for verification. And what is important there is the report tab. So where is written report, that is where you will access the comments from the assessor. Make sure that before you start working on your CPD and before you can even resubmit, you look at the report. That is the first thing that you must do, because it will guide you on the areas wherein you were not successful, and you will be able to focus on that. And then for CPDs that are successful, that's how the page will look like. Under the assessment status, it will say successful, and then the report will also be there so that you can see the comments from the assessor as well. Next slide, please. Okay, and then this is how the intern page will look like. Like I said, you will be able to this is the dashboard. Let me put it like that for CPD. So the first cycle, with different colors, red, black, and all those colors, is showing all the 6 domains. And then the middle one, where it's saying entries by status, is giving you the status of your entries. And then whether you have submitted, whether your CPD is with the moderator, or it will tell you where your CPD is. And then the last one is entries by outcome. It gives you the outcome. When it's saying successful, it means you have passed your CPD. Therefore, only one in that case is successful. And then when it's saying not available, it means the results are not yet released. You need to wait for the results to be released, and then you will know whether you are successful or not. So that is it's where you will monitor the progress in terms of your submitted CPDs. Thank you. Next slide, please. And then here we are sharing with you some of the reasons that may delay release from internship. Because remember, after 365 days, we're expecting you to be released. But please note that submitting CPD entries after the 1st of December submission deadline will delay your release. And non-competency in 6 of 6 CPD entries is another reason. Failing the pre-registration examination can also delay you. Incomplete progress report, as well as not having completed 365 days of practical training. So please keep this slide in mind as you continue with your internship. Okay, and then we encouraging you to submit your CPD entries on time in order to avoid disappointments. So here we're sharing some of the queries we're receiving when people are disappointed. The first intern is saying, can my CPD be marked as my ComServe placement once, evidence that they have been completed before I get my appointment letter? So unfortunately, we won't do anything with that. The other one is saying, I hope this finds you well. I'm writing to just find out when the next CPD results will be released, as I submitted my last year and I'm worried that they may stop me from getting released for community service. So those are some of the disappointments. Unfortunately, we stick into the deadlines from council. So make sure that you observe them to avoid these disappointments. Next slide, please. Okay, and then intern CPD queries. From the office, we encouraging interns to take responsibility of all the CPD related matters, including submission of their queries to SAPC. It's always good to submit queries in time so that the office can assist you without delaying your CPD from being submitted for assessment. And what we trying to request you to stay away from is to have your family, your parents, or your family members contacting council on your behalf. Please note that this is not acceptable to council. We're taking you as professionals who can take care of their own CPD related issues, and we will appreciate if you can start taking responsibility. Please keep your parents and your family out of these CPD issues, because it's between you and the office of the registrar. Next slide, please. Okay, and then here we want to share with you the procedures you need to follow in case you want to submit for reassessment, or for you want to consult with an assessor, maybe you need clarity on something. Please note that reassessment of CPD entries and appeals procedure is as follows. You need to submit a written request to council within 1 calendar month from the date of notification of results, and there is a non-refundable fee that you need to pay. and results will be communicated to the intern within 14 days following receipt of the results from the moderator. And should the intern not be satisfied with the reassessment or the reanalysis, they may initiate an appeal process in terms of council's appeal policy, which is also in your manual. You are free to look at it and understand it. And in case of an intern who wants to consult with an assessor, here's the procedure. The first thing you need to, the communication between the intern and the assessor will be facilitated by the office of the registrar, meaning if you want to have a consultation, you need to notify the office via a query to say you need to have a consultation with your assessor. And please note that there are requirements such as having failed the same CPD more than once. I mean, you have submitted it more than once and you were unsuccessful in both submission. In that, that is one of the requirements. And if that is met, then you will be able to have a conversation with your assessor. And please note that interns may only use the email address provided and will not be allowed to call, SMS, or WhatsApp any assessor or moderator as they wish. The intern will only communicate with the assessor and moderator within the time agreed. Thank you. Okay, there is also what we consider as unprofessional conduct. So here we're saying there are some actions that will be considered as unprofessional conduct, and interns need to take them into consideration. For example, pressurizing an assessor or moderator to mark your CPDs, that is not acceptable. And threatening the assessor or moderator to mark your CPD entries, that is also not acceptable. Please note that you can contact the assessor through the office, and there shouldn't be any threats and anything of that nature. And the other unprofessional conduct is when interns are copying CPDs that were submitted in the past. That is also unacceptable. And please note that unprofessional behavior will result in disciplinary actions being taken against any of the interns who will do any of the acts that are mentioned above. So please make sure that you play safe in order to avoid to make sure that you are not being taken for disciplinary actions. Okay, and then in this slide, we're just sharing with you the CPD competency statistics as of the 16th February 2023. So this is the performance of the 2022 interns in terms of CPD competency statistics. We had 1,349 interns in 2022, and then 1,053 of these interns were successful in 6 CPDs as of the 16th of February 2023. That means we had 78% of interns successful in CPDs. And then 298 of these interns, they are not yet successful in the required CPDs, that is 22%, and they will continue this year until they meet the requirements. So with this slide, we're just trying to say to you, it's possible to pass CPDs. And then if you haven't met the requirements by the end of 2023, please know that there is still an opportunity for you to continue until you have met the requirement. Next slide, please. So this is important information for you. Interns who haven't paid the annual fee, please make sure that the fee is payable by the 1st of June. And the fees are also published on the website. And then also remember that you must internship must be completed within 12 months. Since most of your employment contracts expires after 12 months. So make sure that you stick to the contract and you do your part to avoid disappointment. And it is also possible for the contract to be extended. That should be an arrangement between the training pharmacy as well as the tutor, because if you don't have the facility or the tutor, unfortunately, you can't be able to extend your internship. And then please note that intern progress is made available to interns, employers, tutors, and also to the Department of Health for the purpose of placement for community service. And then applying for community service, please note that this is done through ICSP, which is managed by the Department of Health. So you will be notified when it's time for you to apply, and the Department of Health will facilitate workshops to take you through on exactly what is it that is expected of you. And from council, we will also conduct a workshop for you towards the end of the year to take you through of CSP requirements in terms of registration with council. Thank you. And please remember, only interns who met internship requirements will be placed for community service. And then from this slide, you are able to contact council. Please make sure that you put your PIN number and your query, and then your query will come through to us and we will be able to respond to your query within 72 hours. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the website that you can use also to, to contact customer care. I'm sorry, the email. So please make sure that you use it as well in case you want to communicate with us. And we are closed over the weekend. We're opening Monday to Friday. Thank you. And that's the end of my presentation. That's where you can contact council. Thank you.
Good evening, colleagues. Natalie, can you confirm that you can hear me and see my screen, please?
100% Adele.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second workshop presented by Pharmacy Council. I am Adele Nadia. I'm one of the CPD assessors for Council, and with me this evening is Dr. Nelaveni Padiachi, and she's a moderator for Council, and we will be taking you through the second presentation of this evening. First of all, I just want to say Thabang explained all the requirements for the CPDs, but really we hope that there will be no need for you to resubmit anything after attending this workshop and seeing all the information. And as Prof. Butler said in the previous workshop, this is the collective wisdom from all the CPD assessors, the moderators, and Pharmacy Council to ensure that you are successful on your first go with all your CPDs. And I'm sure if we take note of all the resources that's available and look at this presentation, that we can change that 78% successful interns to 100% this year. So first of all, we're going to look at the outline for this presentation this evening. First of all, we're going to look at all the terminology and then the CPD cycle. We're going to look at the assessment. We're going to talk a little bit about professionalism, confidentiality. We are going to look at challenging competency standards, and we're going to look at the role of the tutor. So this presentation is mostly aimed at our interns, but we are glad to have some tutors with us as well this evening to assist the interns in their role this year and to be successful. So first of all, We're going to talk about very important resources for you as a pharmacist intern. Thabang has already shown you where to download the manual, and it's really, really important for you to download that manual and keep it handy. Keep it next to you while you are doing your CPDs, looking at the deadlines, looking at the checklists. We will be going through all of them. We will be looking at the assessment criteria, the checklist, the competency standards, and you can find the page numbers on the slide as well. And we will be talking about your tutor and the SAPC website as a resource for you. And what I just want to mention to interns is the criteria that we use, that we are showing you tonight, and the checklist. That is what we as assessors and moderators are using to assess your CPD. So it is available to you beforehand. So you can take these, assess your own CPD. Your tutor can assess your CPD to ensure that all the elements are there and that you will be successful this year. There's no reason why you shouldn't be successful. A lot of interns are successful on their first go with all 6 CPDs. It is doable, and we really hope that this opportunity will provide you the guidance for you to be successful in all 6 your CPDs as well. So take note of all these pages in your manual. I'm sure all of you have downloaded it, you've gone through it, and you've seen the relevant sections. So first of all, let's talk about terminology, because you will get some feedback from your tutor or from your assessor or your moderator, and they will say it's not linked to the competency standard, or the behavioral statements is not addressed. And then you should know what we are talking about. Your assessor will tell you you've not addressed all the behavioral statements, and then you would just know where that fits in. So first of all, the domain, that is the big one, as Thabang said. Then the competency standard is beneath or under the domain, and then we have the behavioral statements under the competency standard. We have the framework for you as an example. We've taken domain 2. And there you can see domain 2 is about safe and rational use of medicine and medical devices. And under that, you can find competency standard 2.1 up to 2.8. And you as an intern can select the most appropriate one for you. Let's say, for example, you select competency standard 2.1. We go down one level, and you can see there are behavioral statements under the competency standard. And the behavioral statements are the things that you should show the assessor or the moderator that you are able to achieve. But we will talk about that a little bit later. But you can just see the hierarchy of a competency framework with the domains, and each of them, as we said, number 1 to 6, has these levels of competency standards and behavioral statements. You can also see that there are various numbers of behavioral statements between the competency standards. For example, there can be 1 behavioral statement, there can be 9 behavioral statements. It all depends on the competency standard that you have selected. Thabang talked a little bit about the 6 domains. The domains were developed for the South African context, and it is for all pharmacy practice settings. There you can see domains are organized clusters of competencies, and you can read through the 6 domains. And remember, you as an intern should complete 1 CPD within each domain. So for pharmacists, the tutors, those of you who are here, you know that you can select anyone, but interns, please remember you have to select 1 competency standard within each of the domains. So as we said, the competency standard is part of a domain. You will find some information in your manual that will show you how this applies to you. There's an introduction, there's competencies, there's behavioral statements. Then we have the entry level, where you as an intern is currently. We have intermediate practice, advanced practice, and we have a ticked box. And I'll show you now. But for interns, you will fall under the entry level for the first 3 years of practice. Then you will move over to intermediate, That's if you are registered for 3 to 7 years. And then we go to advanced, and that is when you have practiced for more than 7 years. So that's later in your career. So if you look, you will see this in your manual as well. We've copied competency standard 2.6, that's pharmacist initiated therapy. And you can see we have the behavioral statements. There's 4 of them, A to D. You have your tick box, and there you can say yes or no, but this is what you will find in your manual for every competency standard under each of the domains. So there's the bigger picture. If you go through your manual and take this weekend, or if you haven't done so, please study your manual. There's a lot of information. And once you've gone through the manual and you've studied all the sections and all the resources that's available, you will see it's actually not difficult to submit a successful CPD. So you can see, does this domain apply to me? This domain applies to all pharmacists who play a role in ensuring the safe and rational use of medicine to improve patient health outcomes. So read the introduction of each domain to get a better sense what this competency standard or this domain is about. And then you will see you have different competencies, and carefully read through them to see what will be appropriate for your practice sector where you are currently. And please don't try to do a CPD for something that you are not actually doing. So now we've looked at the terminology, and the terminology will now be clear to you. So if you get a comment from an assessor or a moderator talking about a competency standard or talking about a behavioral statement, you will know where to address the issue. So what is CPD? And this is not only for the interns. We as pharmacists also have to do 6 CPDs yearly, and it's a process, it's a cycle. And it's a process by which registered persons maintain and enhance their competency throughout their careers. And it's very important to look at the CPD as a development opportunity. There's always something to learn. We are in a career that's always changing. There's always new things to learn. There's always something that you didn't know. So it's an opportunity for you to keep up to date and to grow with our profession. So CPD enables registered persons to develop in the area of practice and demonstrate competence. So please don't see this as a hurdle for you. There's always something that you did not know. You can incorporate it into a CPD and submit that for your 6 CPD activities. If we look at the CPD cycle, and we always say there are 4 phases in the CPD cycle, but what's very important for you to remember as an intern, even though it's 4 different phases, it's one story. And sometimes interns get lost in the story, and then the reflection doesn't talk to the planning, and the planning and the implementation doesn't align, which doesn't align with the evaluation. You must remember it's one activity, it's one story that you tell your assessor and your moderator of what happened to you in the pharmacy and what you have learned. So it's a golden thread that goes through all of these different phases to complete your one activity and your one story. So the 4 phases is reflection. We go to planning, implementation, and evaluation. So we will be looking at them individually, and we will discuss what should be in each one of the 4 phases. And remember, it should be one story. So first of all is a learning title. We start with a reflection, and this is when something happens to you and you start thinking about your activity. So this should be relevant to what you want to learn. Please don't copy the wording of the competency standard. Then you will not receive your marks for this one. And the learning title must describe your unique activity. So, for example, say you are providing pharmacist-initiated therapy. Please don't make your learning title pharmacist-initiated therapy. Describe your own activity describe a pregnant patient requesting treatment for heartburn over the counter, or what the case may be. You can just word it a little bit better, but make it unique and describe the case. So for the reflection, ask yourself, what do I need to learn? So it's my own learning need. How do I know that this is what I need to learn? And what will I do with what I have learned? So it's very important to make this I. A patient requested something in the pharmacy and I did not know how to assist this patient. I was unsure of what to provide to the patient. So be careful not to describe the learning need of the patient. The patient didn't know what to use for their heartburn. I didn't know how to provide pharmacist-initiated therapy. So it's very important that you describe your learning need and not what the patient didn't know, for example. So the learning need must be related to the selected outcome. If we stay with pharmacist-initiated therapy, don't describe that the pharmacy staff didn't know how to use an insulin pen, for example. It should be related to pharmacist-initiated therapy if you selected 2.6. So first, remember, make it personal and your own learning need. So once you know what you need to learn, this will determine the choice of your competency standard. So remember, you know in which domain you are. We are now in the smaller one, the competency standards, and then the bottom ones, the behavioral statements. So then in your manual, you will find your checklist. And then you can go, after you've formulated your learning title, you can go and evaluate your title. If it's a direct copy of the behavioral statement, you will get 0. If it's similar to the behavioral statement or the competency standard, or it's not appropriate, you will get 0. But if it's original, descriptive, and related to the scenario presented, and it's related to the learning need, you will get your mark for the learning title. So you can actually see how easy it is to evaluate yourself to make sure that you've incorporated everything that needs to be incorporated to be successful. If we look at the learning need, you will see there's a 0 to 3 as well, but tonight we're going to only focus on the successful ones. So there's a clear learning need and indication of what the intern hopes to achieve. So you can see if you work through this criteria and evaluate what you have written, you will definitely be successful. So I really urge you to make use of this criteria, evaluate your own CPD, or ask somebody and your tutor to evaluate using this matrix, and then you will be successful. So you can see, to get the 3, what happened that triggered this learning need, an indication of what the intern hopes to achieve after completing this activity or this competency. So you can see what should be included there and how easy it is to be successful. So there's the other checklist that you can use. Is there a title? Yes. Is the title short, specific, and related to the competency standard? Yes. Is the title a concise statement in my own words? Yes. So you can see you can use the checklist and you can use the criteria, and that way you can make sure that all the elements that should be in there is in your submission. The reflection, I have clearly stated what I need to learn. I have stated my learning need in the first person. I have stated why I have identified this learning need for myself, and have I made sure not to include details of planning. Remember, this is only your reflection. So what do I need to learn? Why have I identified this? And you can see it should be I. So please use this to structure your reflection. So tell the assessor, remember the assessor and the moderator is not there. A patient came in, they requested this. I realized that I don't know how to do this. And after doing this, I hope to achieve the following. So you can see that you know exactly what's going to happen. I've set the scene for this activity, and I can now go forward to my planning. So the next stage, I now know what I want to learn. Now I'm going to describe how am I going to achieve this? How am I going to learn this? So it's not only describing how you plan to proceed, but you are telling us what you are going to do, how you are going to do this, why you are planning to do things this way, as well as when you are going to do this. So at this stage, it's very important to look at your manual and now get the behavioral statements handy. Because the behavioral statements are the things you have to provide evidence for. That is what you need to show us that you are able to do. So keep the behavioral statements handy now and look at each of them and tell us, what will I do to achieve this, to show you that I am now able to do this? Remember, you couldn't do it before. You did some research, or you did an activity, or you consulted a reference, and you will be able to do it now. So remember the 4 things that you need to include: what you are going to do, how are you going to do it, why are you doing it this way, and when are you doing it? So, for example, I'm stating I need to consult the Pharmacy Act. So I'm stating I am planning to consult the Pharmacy Act. And that's where I leave my statement. That will not be sufficient. I need to say I am planning to consult the Pharmacy Act, Chapter 2, or this section, or for example, the GPP. If you're going to consult the GPP, you will say section 2.1.5 of the GPP, because that is where you can find the minimum standards or what the case may be. So you can say what you are planning to do, why you are planning to do this, and then if it's relevant, when you are planning to do this. So it's very important to include all of this. You can see at number 3, a detailed plan provided with the reasoning for the planning and specific details to be used, and linked to at least 75% of the behavioral statements. So it's very important at this stage, as I said, keep the behavioral statements handy. Describe how you are planning to achieve each and every one of them. Either asking your tutor, or consulting a reference, or a short course, or whatever the case may be, to appropriately address that behavioral statement. There you can see detailed plan and specific details, and linked to the behavioral statements. And remember, your planning should be in the future tense, because you are planning to do this. So back to the checklist, and you can see the checklist is for every section of the CPD cycle. So have I clearly stated how I am going to learn this? Have I identified which resources I will be using? Have I explained how I will be using this? Have I made sure not to just write what I intend to do? And have I written this in the future tense? So you can see, just by looking at this checklist and making sure you answer yes to all the questions, I'm sure that your assessor or your moderator will agree if you have checked all these requirements. So now we've done the planning. We told the assessor and the moderator what we are going to do, how we will achieve this. It's in future tense. And then we go to the implementation. So implementation is describing what you actually did. So remember that the planning was in future tense. The implementation now is written in past tense, because you now did the activity. You did everything that you said that you were going to do. And now you will provide the context, what you did, when you did it, where you did it, how you did it, and you will link this to the evidence. Please remember to include all the behavioral statements of the chosen outcome. And as we said, it's written in the past tense. And there again, we will look at the 3, a description of what, where, when, how, and references made to the evidence and linked to the behavioral statement. So you can see before you submit your entry, you could see what the assessor will be looking at to mark a successful entry. We will talk a little bit about evidence later and the criteria for evidence, but there you can see if it's current, it's valid, it's authentic, and it's sufficient, it's annotated, and it's linked to the description, you will get your allocation of the 3. And that means that you will be successful. Again, the checklist, you can find that in the intern manual. Have I described what I did? Have I included the where, the when, the what, the how? Is it in past tense? Have I referred to labels of my evidence in text? Have I checked what I did matches my learning need? So you remember now it's the one story. So what you should ensure that what you wanted to learn is what you actually describe in the implementation, and that you have actually learned that and showed us that you're now able to do it. Have I checked what I did addresses all the behavioral statements of the competency standard. And remember, your implementation must be supported by your evidence, and the two should talk to one another. Quickly going to look at the evidence checklist. We will be looking at evidence in the next few slides. So the first one is, have I checked that I have sufficient evidence and that I've covered at least 75% of the behavioral statements? Have I annotated my evidence? And we will be talking about annotation and the labeling of evidence. Have I annotated my evidence with the behavioral statements, and does it match the behavioral statements that I mentioned under implementation? Furthermore, is it readable? Is it clear? It's not upside down. It's readable. And have I made sure that I have protected patient confidentiality? So if you've checked all this in the yes box, there's no reason why your entry would not be successful. But as I said, we're going to talk about evidence a little bit later. The last step in the four-step cycle is our evaluation. So the focus for our evaluation is, what have you learned? But it's not only that. It's how have you applied what you have learned? How have you used the subsequent knowledge? What was the impact on your practice? And you have identified a future learning need. So now you can see there are 4 things that should be included in the evaluation to be successful. So what was learned, and how was the learning, how has it influenced my practice? How did you apply it? And a lot of interns struggle with the application. Say, for example, you needed to compound a mixture, and then the intern will state, another patient came in with the exact same mixture, and I was able to do that. Your application, or how you applied this knowledge, should be in a new situation, and you should give us an example of that. So tell us how you applied this compounding knowledge that you gained in a new situation, what the impact was, and what you still want to learn. So something that you want to learn that falls within the same domain. You can see, provide an example to substantiate this. And again, to get the 3, you can see there are various aspects that should be covered to be able to be successful. But you can check all this before you submit your CPD, so the assessor can just check and you can be successful. So we have the checklist again. Have I clearly stated what I learned from the action? Have I checked that my learning need matches my learning need? my learning match my learning need and the competency standard? Have I clearly described how this learning has impacted on the way I practice? You've given a specific example of application, and you have identified a future learning need. So you can see the aspect that should be covered in the evaluation for evaluation to be successful. So there we see the full cycle again, and you have to complete all 4 of these phases for one CPD entry. So remember, in each domain, you will select one competency standard, and for that competency standard and the behavioral statements, you have to complete all 4 phases for the one activity. So remember, completing your CPD entry is a stepwise approach. First of all, as Tabang stated, you have to complete your annual declaration. You now know how to do it. Then you have to go through your manual. So please take some time when you're not at the pharmacy or when you have some time, go through all the domains, look at what is available, identify the activities that might be appropriate, and then you can start planning your CPDs and try and work out what evidence should be collected or what you need to do. So first of all, we're going to do an annual declaration. We're going to select a domain, then a competency standard. Then you're going to read all the behavioral statements. You're going to start your CPD cycle, complete it. Once you've submitted the CPD cycle, you will submit online for tutor verification. Please ensure that you submit timelessly to give your tutor sufficient time to verify your entry and to submit it. Remember, once you've submitted your entry, it's not available for assessment until your tutor verifies. And sometimes, as you know, the lines are off, the tutor doesn't have access, or they can't verify, and then you miss a deadline. So please make sure that you don't submit at 11:59 for the deadline at 12, and give your tutor sufficient time to verify. Once it is verified by the tutor and it's submitted online, then it goes through to assessment by council, and then you can wait for your feedback. Another thing I just want to mention, please check your reports. If you need to do a resubmission, and hopefully after tonight it won't be necessary, you have to check the report, because when you do a resubmission, the entry will go back to the same assessor and to the same moderator. So the results will not change if there was a comment and you did not change anything. So please check for feedback before you resubmit, if it is necessary to resubmit. So you can see you focus on your relevance to your practice setting. There's the 4 steps that you need to complete. And make sure that your tutor has verified. As I stated, it's not when you submit, it's when your tutor has verified the activity. Only then is it available for assessment on Council's website. So once you've chosen the competency standard, you have to check that it's appropriate for your practice section or sector. You cannot do manufacturing, for example, if you are not a manufacturing intern. Read all the behavioral statements, decide what is appropriate and sufficient, and follow through. And please remember to look at the checklists. You now saw how easy it is to check your own submission with the checklist next to you to make sure that all the relevant aspects are included in your submission. Okay, so we're looking at the requirements. You've heard it before tonight. You need to submit 6 CPDs, 1 from each domain. You have to be successful in all 6 of the entries. And please do not submit all 6 your entries at once. If you are very sure that you will be successful, what we usually suggest is submit 1, 2, or 3 maybe, Get some feedback, see if you are on the right track, see if you are doing everything correctly. Please ensure patient confidentiality. Make sure that you have all the guidelines, and then submit the other 6 or the other 3. So what we usually tell the interns, as I said, do not submit all 6 entries now on your first go. Get used to the cycle, get some feedback. Sometimes your assessor you will be successful, but they will give you some pointers for your next submission, or there might be some issues regarding your submission. You forgot about patient name on labels or what the case may be, but allow sufficient time throughout the year for assessment of submissions. And as Tabang said, try to submit all your CPDs within the first 6 months of your internship. For each domain, choose one competency standard. Read all the behavioral statements carefully. If there are 1, 2, or 3 behavioral statements, you need to provide evidence for all the behavioral statements, and that is very, very important. If there are 4 or more behavioral statements, you have to provide evidence for at least 75% of the behavioral statements. And please consult your manual for more information regarding this. But usually what we always also tell interns is do everything. Maybe the assessor or the moderator might feel that you didn't address one behavioral statement sufficiently, but if you addressed all 4, then you might be successful. So please, if it's possible, address all the behavioral statements. Every CPD entry must reflect your own work, and please take note that no group activities are allowed. You have to do your own CPD. So this is very, very important. Please take note of this. So now we are getting to evidence. And evidence is very important for your CPD. And there are a number of criteria that your evidence should adhere to. First of all, it should be annotated. It should be current. It should be valid. It should be authentic. And it should be sufficient. So we're going to look at each of these for you to understand, and evidence should adhere to all of them. So first of all, we're going to talk about annotation. So what is annotation? Annotation is a way for you to give meaning to the evidence, to explain why you have included it. Make sure that it's easy to read. It justifies why the evidence is there, as I said. So if you just scan in a page of a document and you don't say why you have included it, why is it important, what information on that page have you used and how have you used it, it will be meaningless. It must be planned and meaningful, and it must provide links to the behavioral statements. So say, for example, you include a page from the GPP. You have to tell us why that page is there. Did you use some of the information on that page? If that's the case, show us how you used that information. Where did you use that information? Did you evaluate a label? Or say for the Medicines Act, if you evaluate a prescription, if you include Regulation 33, so show us how you evaluated the prescription, how you evaluated the labels. Then that will make sense. You can annotate, you can write next to the relevant sections and show us how this was applied in the evidence. The annotation must tell a story, and it must show us what you have done. It must show us how you learned this and how you are now able to use this to show us that you are competent. So annotations is not merely labels. It's not single words. It's not illegible scribbles. And it shouldn't lack links to the behavioral statements. So it's very important. And even you can write it by hand neatly to explain the relevance of each piece of evidence. So annotation is actually very, very important. And here is an example. Say, for example, there's a date on a prescription. The one annotation with no value says this is the date of the prescription. We all know it's the date of the prescription, but why is the date important? And if you look at the meaningful annotation, it says, for a prescription to be valid, it must be presented for dispensing within 1 month after it was written. Therefore, this is a valid prescription. So you can see the difference between the two annotations. The one has no meaning. We all know it's a date, but why is the date important for you? Why did you look of that information? There's another example for annotation of evidence. So you can see we have an invoice. So how can we annotate this? So you can see the intern wrote it's an invoice, there's a name of a pharmacy, medicine, date, batch number, and account number. But does that really tell us something? Why did the intern include this as evidence? So do you think it's good annotation if you were the assessor and had to look at this annotation or the way that the intern has annotated this? Do you think this has any meaning? So again, same annotation, just a little bit neater. So do you think this has value? We have the invoice from the wholesaler, the name of the medicine, but still my question remains, if you were the assessor, what did the intern do with the information that is shown on this invoice? Again, is this annotation good? So put yourself in the assessor and the moderator's shoes and see if you will know what the meaning of these annotations might be. So look at this invoice that was annotated, and there you can see I checked the name of the pharmacy on the parcel to confirm that it is indeed for my pharmacy. I checked the name of the medicine, the strength, and the pack size. The batch number. I compared the batch number with the batch number on the parcel to ensure that it is the same. This is important for batch traceability. So there you can see the way in which this piece of evidence was annotated gives us meaning. So we know why the intern checked the name, why the batch number was checked. So you can see the value of any annotation is very important to explain the relevance of the piece of evidence. And you can see here at the top, 3.2. CS 3.2E, and that is the link to the behavioral statement. So the evidence is linked to the behavioral statement, and everything that the intern checked is described and it has meaning. So what do you think is the quality of this invoice and the annotation provided? Okay, so the next one is current. It's very important for you to make sure that you collect your evidence within your internship period. And please do not include anything from your undergraduate studies. So make it a new activity that happens this year, and everything should be current for this year. The next criteria we're going to look at is valid. So the evidence must pertain to the specific competency standard being addressed. The first one, and if you make any calculation errors or factual errors, the evidence will not be valid. So if you work out a concentration incorrectly for a mixture, or you have the incorrect new expiry date, then the evidence will not be valid. So if the evidence is not valid, the other 4 criteria will not count. So it's very important to make sure that you have no errors, dosing errors, calculation errors, any interactions, anything. So for example, if the competency standard is about how to fry an egg and your evidence is about how crispy the bacon is, it is of no value. So make sure that the evidence is telling us what you want it to tell us. Authentic, please make sure that it's your own work and it must be verified by the tutor. And remember, we said, please give your tutor sufficient time to verify and to make sure that you fall into a specific assessment cycle that you would like to be in. Tutor verification, make sure that your tutor verifies and it is your responsibility to check. Sufficient. So what does it mean if we say there should be sufficient evidence? If there are 4 or more behavioral statements, then the evidence submitted must cover at least 75% of the behavioral statements. So for example, if there are 4, remember we said we must at least cover 3 of them, or 0.75 times the number of the statements. So make sure you have enough evidence, and that's why I say it's, if possible, address all the behavioral statements, so then you ensure that if your assessor or moderator decides that the one behavioral statement is not addressed sufficiently, that you still cover 75% of the behavioral statements. And please focus on the quality of your evidence and not the quantity. So make sure that you have good quality evidence. It's not about 50 pages or 100 pages. It's about selecting your evidence to show specific behaviors or behavioral statements. The same piece of evidence can't be used for more than one competency standard. So if you have used a prescription or evaluated a prescription in one competency standard, you cannot evaluate that prescription again in another competency standard. Do not submit a whole piece of legislation. So please do not submit the whole Medicines Act or the whole GPP. Just take the section that's relevant and annotate that appropriately. Do not add evidence that may have clauses for intellectual property, especially for manufacturing interns. So please make sure that you are able to submit the evidence and that we are able to read it and you don't have to redact too much of the information. So now we're quickly going to do a poll. Natalie, I think the link will be in the chat for you guys. And if you choose a competency standard that has 8 behavioral statements, for how many pieces of evidence should you submit? So if you there's 8, there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. So there's 8 of them. For how many behavioral statements should you submit evidence? So if you go onto the poll, you can see you have different options. So if we have 8 behavioral statements, how many of the behavioral statements do you need to cover to address 75% of the behavioral statements?
Hi, Adele. So it's looking pretty good. It looks like 51 of the interns are going on to 60 now, who are saying that 6 is the correct answer. And then we have 2 interns who believe that 8 is the correct answer. So majority of the interns think it's 6, which is the correct answer.
Yes, thank you, Vinnie. So 6 is definitely the correct answer, but if it's possible, 8 would be the perfect amount of behavioral statements to address, just in case your assessor or your moderator feels that one of the behavioral statements were not addressed sufficiently. So well done to all the interns that answered correctly. It is indeed 6, so at least 6. But if you can do more, it is advisable. So if we talk a little bit about evidence, so you are allowed to use photographs, but please use a date stamp so that we know when the photograph was taken. And a photograph is meaningless unless you have identified yourself And please remember, patient confidentiality is very important. It can be anyone in the photo, so you have to say which one is you in the photograph, what are you doing, why are you there, and what's the meaning of this photograph. Please remember to maintain patient confidentiality. If you have a big audience, it might be better maybe to take the photograph from behind, that you don't have too many faces that you need to blur out. But please, patient confidentiality is very, very important when you submit your CPDs. Pages from the SAMP, for example, if you're going to use that, you have to include the edition, the page number, what do you want to show with this. If you just include a page, then it's not possible to check the edition, it's not possible to check the page number, and we don't know why you have included it. If it's just a page, the only thing you have shown us is that you are able to use a scanner. There's no relevance if the page is not annotated. And don't draw a line on the side of the page and say, I used this information. Show us what you used. Show us how you used it. Did you use the age? Did you use the interactions? What did you use from that page for your CPD and for your learning? As we said, delivery notes. If stock was delivered, if you don't annotate the signatures or tell us what you did or how you were involved or what you want to prove with this, it is meaningless. So think about what you are submitting and think about what this is saying to us. Put yourself in the assessor's shoes before you submit and ask yourself, what does it show? Well, it will probably point to the need for more discussion or more annotation. So just look at your submission once you are done and look at each piece of evidence and ask yourself, if you were assessing this, what does it show? Is it only a page? Does it show application? Does it show what you did with the information? And that is very, very important. For evidence, please no high glossy photos. It scans very dark and you can't see anything. Please make sure that your evidence is not upside down. Please make sure that it's clear and legible. Very important, if possible, please submit it in one document. It's very difficult to follow the storyline if it is in 15 documents and it's a page for this and a page for that. So follow the storyline, submit it in one, let your evidence tell the story, link it to the behavioral statements, show us the applications, show us what you've learned, and annotate, annotate, annotate. You can now see how meaningful good annotations can be. Please link it to the behavioral statements, identify your signature, and please remember the assessors and moderators is not in the pharmacy, and we're not there. So we do not know what you have done unless you show us what you have done and what you are now able to do. So what kind of evidence can you submit? Say, for example, I'm providing information to a patient. So first of all, say it's you have a prescription. What else can you add? So please think about this. If you're providing to a group, then maybe we can think about the attendance register, the presentation that you gave, you can add that, the reference material that you use, the feedback that you received from the audience. There's a lot of things that you can add, and please think about your evidence, what you want it to say and what you can add. You can be very creative in the evidence that you can add. Please remember this is only one presenter. It's no group activities as we stated previously. If you give us feedback on a presentation, it should reflect the knowledge and understanding of the audience after the presentation and not only a rating of the presenter. Remember to annotate and link to the behavioral statement. So if you give us an attendance register, please link it to a behavioral statement and tell us why you've included this attendance register, or show us the presentation, how you used it, how you presented it, include some photographs, or what you want to do. If you have an attendance register, please include the date, the name, the venue, who was the presenter, at which hospital was it presented. So provide us with all the information. I'm consulting with a patient again. So what can you include for evidence? The patient history, the prescription, a request form, a blue copy, labels, and any reference material that you used. For example, the package insert or the professional information, the SAMF, or whatever you used for this presentation. And please, not Wikipedia, it's not scientific, and please annotate all your material. For example, if you are consulting a prescriber, what evidence can you use? Provide us with the reason why you phoned them. Give us the prescription that you received, the reference material that you used before you consulted the prescriber, the telephone number of the doctor, the time of the conversation. You make some notes on the prescription. And please, you do not have to protect the confidentiality for a prescriber. They are also health professionals. So think very creatively what you can use as evidence, and there's a lot of options available to you. So again, what kind of evidence? You attend a meeting, so what can you include? You can have an agenda, an attendance register, minutes of the meeting, and it's very important, just sitting in a meeting doesn't mean that you have achieved any learning or that you are able to do something. You have to describe your own contribution in the meeting, or somebody, a pharmacist that attended the meeting with you, can tell us what your contribution in the meeting was. If you're working with data, the reason for the data collection, the data analysis, the screening report. So there's a lot of options that you can use if you are just thinking creatively about your evidence. Very important, we've talked about the checklist. Please use the checklist. And there again, I have checked that I have sufficient evidence. Remember the 75%. Very important to remember the annotations. It's very important to explain the relevance of each piece of evidence in relation to the behavioral statements and in relation to the implementation. Is my evidence clear? It's readable? And have I made sure for patient confidentiality? Please make sure patient confidentiality, we are talking about trailer labels, the top and the bottom part of blue copies, Schedule 6 registers. I had an intern that only covered her own patient in a Schedule 6 register and not all the other patients. So please make sure trailer labels everywhere where a patient name might be visible, that you protect patient confidentiality. So we're almost to the end of this first part and we can have a little body break. So evidence summary. The evidence is proof of what you did. It's not merely reading an article. It's not theoretical. Please make sure that it's an activity that you can actually do in your practice area. And it's not witnessing somebody else doing the activity. You have to show us that you are able to perform this activity. Once you've done the learning, you are able to do this and you are now competent to do this activity in future. It must be professional, it must be neat and clear, and it's not just a scribble on a prescription. Very important, I performed the activity. And Natalie, I think this is where we have our body break. We are 3 minutes overdue. So Tabang, maybe if you can just come in, will we give them a body break now?
Yes, if it will be 10 minutes, maybe we'll come back at 8 o'clock. Let's make it 8 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. So everybody will be back at 8 o'clock. So just for a quick body break, and then Dr. Pariachi will continue with the rest of the presentation.